The UES Phoenix hung in the void like a shadow among stars, its matte black hull seeming to bend light around its edges. Captain Raj Patel moved with calculated precision across the bridge, studying the cascade of holographic data that filled the air around him, with an expression of quiet confidence. Galactic Council delegation's ship approaching final coordinates, sir, announced Lieutenant Nadia Hassan from her tactical station. Her fingers danced across the quantum interface, making microscopic adjustments to the shield harmonics. Their sensors are actively scanning us. Let them look, Raj responded, a ghost of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Show them exactly what Commander Jun prepared for them to see. The massive council vessel dwarfed the Phoenix, its crystalline structure catching and refracting sunlight in prismatic patterns. To most observers, the size difference alone would tell the story. Humanity's best effort at a warship, barely a quarter the size of a standard council diplomatic vessel. The bridge crew maintained their positions with practiced ease as the teleportation sequence began. Streams of light coalesced into forms. First, the council's security detail, hulking crystalline beings whose bodies refracted light in impossible ways, then the diplomats themselves. High Inspector Melitrix emerged last, their liquid metal form flowing like quicksilver as they materialized. The beam's surface rippled with complex patterns that the ship's AI translated as a mixture of boredom and mild contempt. This is humanity's proudest achievement. Melitrix's voice resonated through the bridge, their translator giving the words an artificial smoothness. I had expected something more substantial from a species that claims to be ready for council membership. The Phoenix may surprise you, High Inspector, Raj replied, inclining his head at precisely the angle protocol demanded, respectful but not submissive. We find that size isn't always the most relevant metric. The other council members spread out across the bridge, their scanning devices humming as they analyzed every surface. Each diplomat represented a different species that humanity had only seen in briefing holograms until now, beings of crystal, energy, and forms that defied easy description. Such primitive shielding harmonics, commented one, their crystalline forms sparkling with what the AI translated as derisive amusement. And these power signatures, barely above civilian grade. Are you certain this is a warship? Nadia's fingers paused momentarily over her console, but her voice remained steady. The Phoenix serves many purposes, honored guest. Combat capability is only one of them. Melitrix's surface rippled with patterns of dismissal. Yes, we see that quite clearly. Though I must admit, your artificial gravity is remarkably stable for such basic technology. Perhaps not a complete waste of my time. We have a full demonstration prepared, Raj said, gesturing toward the bridge exit. Our engineering section has several innovations we believe will interest you. As the delegation filed out, led by Lieutenant Hassan, Raj exchanged a subtle glance with his crew. The alien scans were showing exactly what the Phoenix wanted them to see, power signatures barely above civilian levels, basic shield harmonics, primitive weapon systems. Not one of them had detected the quantum-locked spaces between spaces or the dimensional folds where the ship's true capabilities lay hidden. Let them think humanity was struggling to match even their lowest technology levels. Let them dismiss the Phoenix as a quaint attempt at matching their greatness. Soon enough, they would understand why Earth's enemies had learned to fear the sight of a human warship appearing in their systems. The universe had laughed at humanity's efforts for too long. But today, that laughter would die in their throats. Through the bridge viewport, Earth turned slowly below them, clouds swirling across its blue surface like brushstrokes on canvas. Humanity's cradle, now one of dozens of worlds they called home. The Council thought they were here to evaluate humanity's readiness for membership. They would soon discover they were actually here to witness the next evolution in warfare, whether they wanted to or not. Commander Jun Nakamura waited in the heart of the Phoenix's engineering section, surrounded by the gentle hum of systems that appeared far simpler than they truly were. The massive chamber stretched upward through 3 decks, filled with equipment that pulsed with a soft blue radiance. To untrained eyes, it looked perfectly ordinary. Exactly what one would expect from a young species' attempts at advanced technology. "And this is our primary engineering center," Lieutenant Hassan announced as she led the council delegation inside. The crystalline security detail had to duck slightly to clear the doorway, their faceted forms casting rainbow refractions across the walls. High Inspector Melitrix flowed forward, their liquid metal form rippling with patterns of mild interest. "Your power core is surprisingly compact, though these containment fields seem rather basic." Jun stepped forward, bowing with precise formality. "We find efficiency often matters more than size, High Inspector. Would you like to see how our systems integrate?" The other council members had already spread out across the chamber, their scanning devices probing every surface. One of them, a being composed of shifting plasma contained within a crystalline shell, paused near a secondary control panel. These thermal exchangers, the plasma being noted, their voice crackling with energy. Their routing power in unusual patterns, most inefficient. Jun allowed herself a small smile. "Sometimes what appears inefficient serves a hidden purpose, honored guest. Our approach to engineering often differs from conventional wisdom." She led them deeper into the chamber, past rows of equipment that hummed with carefully regulated power. Every display showed exactly what they expected to see. Nothing more, nothing less. The real innovations lay beneath, in the quantum-sealed spaces between spaces. "Your shield harmonics are particularly primitive," Melitrix observed, gesturing with a silvery tendril at one of the main displays. "Single-phase modulation. Even your civilian vessels must be vulnerable to basic energy weapons." "We manage," Jun replied, her voice carefully neutral. She tapped a sequence into the nearest console, bringing up a holographic display of the Phoenix's power distribution network. "Perhaps you'd be interested in how we handle energy routing during combat situations." The display showed a complex web of interconnected systems, each one flowing into the next in ways that made several of the alien engineers tilt their heads in confusion. One of them, a crystalline being named Xeris, moved closer to study the patterns. "This can't be right," Xeris muttered, their crystalline form refracting light in patterns that indicated deep thought. "You're feeding power through these junctions in ways that should cause catastrophic overloads." Yet, they paused, faceted eyes narrowing. "The efficiency ratings are actually improving." Jun nodded, expanding the display to show more detail. "We've found that traditional power distribution methods don't always suit our needs. Sometimes you have to break conventional rules to achieve better results." The delegation continued their inspection, their initial dismissal gradually giving way to genuine curiosity. They found more oddities. Systems that seemed to work in ways that defied standard physics, power flows that followed impossible paths, computer responses that were just a little too quick for their apparent technology level. "Your thermal management is particularly interesting," noted another council member, a being of pure energy contained within a humanoid force field. "These heat sinks, they're absorbing more energy than they should be able to handle." "We have certain advantages in materials science," Jum explained, leading them toward the next section. "Sometimes the simplest solutions come from unexpected directions." As they walked, Melitrix's surface rippled with patterns that the ship's AI translated as growing uncertainty. The High Inspector had expected to find a primitive vessel copying council technology. Instead, they were discovering innovations that, while apparently crude, hinted at principles their own engineers hadn't considered. "Tell me, Commander," Melitrix said, their voice carrying a new note of curiosity, "how did your species develop these unusual approaches? Most young races simply attempt to duplicate our established methods." Jun's response was interrupted by a sudden shift in the engine's harmonics. A new note entered the background hum, almost imperceptible, but carrying subtle undertones of power that made the crystalline being's surfaces vibrate in resonance. "Just a standard power fluctuation," Jun said smoothly, though her fingers moved across her console with precise purpose. Would you like to see our quantum computation center next? The delegation followed, their scanning devices still probing uselessly at systems designed to be misunderstood. None of them noticed how the power fluctuation had altered the quantum structure of space throughout the engineering section, activating systems that existed between the dimensions they could perceive. High above them, in the spaces between spaces, the Phoenix's troop heart began to beat faster, preparing for what was to come. The universe had dismissed humanity as primitive for too long. Soon, they would learn just how dangerous such assumptions could be. The first warning came as a ripple in quantum space, a disturbance so subtle that most ships would have missed it entirely. Lieutenant Nadia Hassan felt it through her neural link before the sensors even registered the change. The Phoenix's combat systems, dormant but never truly sleeping, whispered their readiness through the quantum interface. Multiple vessels emerging from hyperspace, she announced, her fingers already dancing across her console. Signatures matched known pirate configurations. Heavy weapons charging. The council delegation had barely returned to the bridge when the first ships materialized. 3 converted battlecruisers, their hulls bristling with weaponry that violated a dozen council regulations. High Inspector Malatrix's liquid metal form rippled with patterns of alarm. Those are hegemony warships, they said, their translator struggling to convey their shock. Stolen and modified. Even your most advanced weapons would be useless against their shielding. Captain Patel settled into his command chair with fluid grace. Lieutenant Hassan, escort our guests to the observation deck's secure area. They should have an excellent view from there. His voice remained perfectly calm, almost conversational. Commander Nakamura, bring all systems to full combat readiness. Sir, Malatrix began, their surface now showing patterns of genuine concern. Perhaps we should contact the Council fleet. These pirates have destroyed ships far more advanced than. The rest of their sentence was lost as the first enemy salvo streaked toward the Phoenix. The pirates had aimed for what their scans told them were the weakest points in the ship's primitive shielding. They expected their attack to cripple the vessel in a single strike. They were wrong. The space around the Phoenix shifted in ways that made the Council members' sensor devices spark and die. Quantum-locked compartments unsealed, revealing weapon systems that existed partially in dimensions the pirates' sensors couldn't detect. The ship's apparent power signature, which had seemed barely above civilian level, suddenly bloomed into something that made the crystalline beings vibrate in resonance. Multiple torpedo launches detected, Nadia reported from her station, her voice carrying the same calm as her captain's. They're using standard hegemony attack patterns. How predictable. The enemy torpedoes, each capable of destroying a small moon, streaked toward the Phoenix. At the last possible moment, the space around the ship twisted. The torpedoes passed through where the Phoenix had appeared to be, only to find empty void. The human vessel now hung behind the pirate fleet, its weapons already firing. Impossible, one of the council engineers whispered. They're manipulating space-time at a level we thought. Target the lead vessel's propulsion systems, Paddle ordered, cutting off the alien's observation. Let's show them why it's unwise to interrupt a diplomatic tour. The Phoenix's response was devastating in its precision. Weapons that the council delegation hadn't even detected opened fire, sending streams of exotic particles through gaps in the pirates' shielding. The lead ship's engines flickered and died, its supposedly impenetrable defenses bypassed as if they weren't even there. How are you penetrating their shields? Malatrix demanded, their liquid metal form rippling with patterns of disbelief. Those are council-grade defensive systems. Commander Nakamura's voice came through the comm system, tinged with professional satisfaction. We found that conventional shield technology has certain blind spots, especially when you approach the problem from angles most engineers never consider. The remaining pirate ships attempted to coordinate their attack, bringing their combined firepower to bear on the Phoenix. Their sensors still showed them a vulnerable target, a primitive vessel that should have been easy prey. The reality they faced was something else entirely. The Phoenix moved like a dancer through their barrage, its movements guided by predictive algorithms that operated on principles the pirates couldn't comprehend. Each evasive maneuver seemed to bend the fabric of space itself, making their targeting computers flash error messages in confusion. Enemy vessels attempting to retreat, Nadia reported. Their hyperspace drives are spooling up. Disable their jump capability, Patil ordered. The Council will want to recover those stolen ships. And Lieutenant, let's make it elegant. We do have an audience, after all. What followed was a demonstration of warfare unlike anything the Council delegation had ever witnessed. The Phoenix's weapons struck with surgical precision, slicing through supposedly impenetrable defenses to disable key systems without destroying the vessels themselves. Each shot threaded an impossible path through space, hitting exactly where intended despite the pirates' desperate evasive maneuvers. In less than 5 minutes, it was over. 3 of the most dangerous pirate vessels in known space hung dead in space, their crews trapped inside ships that now served as floating prisons. The Phoenix had taken no damage, not so much as a scratch on its quantum-shifted hull. High Inspector Melitrix turned to Captain Patel, their surface now showing patterns that the ship's AI translated as a mixture of awe and uncertainty. Your ship, this technology, you've been concealing your true capabilities all along. Patil smiled, but there was steel beneath the expression. Consider it a lesson, High Inspector. The universe has dismissed humanity as primitive for far too long. Perhaps it's time for that perception to change. In the aftermath of battle, the bridge of the Phoenix hummed with controlled power. The captured pirate vessels hung motionless against the starfield, their once fearsome weapons now silent. The Council delegation had returned to the bridge, but their earlier condescension had vanished like stardust in a solar wind. The quantum manipulation field is stable, Commander Nakamura reported from engineering. Ready to begin full systems demonstration, Captain. Very well. Captain Patel turned to High Inspector Melitrix, whose liquid metal form now rippled with patterns of intense attention. Since we're no longer hiding our capabilities, perhaps you'd like to see what the Phoenix can really do. The other Council members had gathered around their scanning devices, which now displayed readings that made their previous measurements seem like children's toys. The ship's true power signature blazed across their instruments, revealing energy patterns that should have been impossible for such a young species to achieve. These readings can't be correct, one of the crystalline engineers muttered, their faceted surface refracting light in patterns of confusion. The power output alone would require, but the containment fields would never. That's because you're thinking in conventional terms, Lieutenant Hassan explained, bringing up a holographic display that filled the bridge with ghostly light. We found that energy doesn't always behave the way everyone assumes it must. The display showed the Phoenix's true configuration, a network of systems that existed partially in dimensions beyond normal spacetime. Power flowed through quantum-locked channels, following paths that seemed to violate the laws of physics themselves. Weapons drew energy from spaces between spaces, while shields bent reality itself rather than simply blocking attacks. Impossible, Melitrix whispered, their surface showing patterns of dawning comprehension. You've developed quantum engineering beyond even our theoretical models. But how? Your species has barely begun to explore the galaxy. Perhaps, Patil suggested, that's precisely why we succeeded. We never learned what was supposed to be impossible. He nodded to Commander Nakamura, who initiated a series of demonstrations that left the Council delegation in stunned silence. The Phoenix's engines didn't just move the ship through space. They rewrote the local laws of physics, making concepts like distance and velocity more like suggestions than rules. The weapon systems didn't merely fire energy or projectiles. They reached through quantum space to deliver precisely calculated effects exactly where needed. The shields didn't just block attacks. They redirected energy through dimensions the attackers couldn't even perceive. Your entire approach to space combat is revolutionary, one of the Council's military observers noted, their energy form pulsing with excitement. You're not just advancing existing technology. You're fundamentally changing how we understand warfare itself. Not just warfare, Hassan corrected, bringing up new displays. These principles apply to everything from medicine to terraforming. We've barely scratched the surface of what's possible. The delegation watched in amazement as the Phoenix demonstrated more of its capabilities. The ship could hide entire sections of itself in quantum space, appear to be in multiple locations simultaneously, or bend sensor readings so effectively that enemies would fire at empty space, while the real vessel struck from unexpected angles. I believe, Malatrix said finally, their surface now showing patterns of deep respect. We owe humanity an apology. We came here expecting to find primitive attempts at copying our technology. Instead, we've discovered innovations that will revolutionize our understanding of science itself. Patel's expression remained diplomatic, but there was a hint of satisfaction in his voice. The Council has always valued innovation, High Inspector. We simply chose to innovate in ways you hadn't considered. Indeed. Malatrix turned to face the bridge crew, their liquid metal form assuming the formal patterns of official Council business. Captain Patel, I am hereby recommending humanity for immediate advancement to full Council membership, with special recognition for technological achievement. The galaxy clearly has much to learn from Earth. The bridge crew maintained their professional composure, but a current of pride ran through the ship's neural network. They had done more than prove humanity's worth. They had changed the course of galactic history. As the Council delegation prepared to depart, Malatrix paused beside Captain Patel. One question, if I may. Why reveal your true capabilities now? You could have maintained this deception indefinitely. Patel smiled, genuine warmth mixing with steel. The galaxy is changing, High Inspector. Pirates grow bolder, ancient threats stir in the void, and darkness gathers at the edges of known space. Humanity didn't develop these technologies just to prove our worth. We created them because we understand what's coming. The real question is, will the Council stand with us when it arrives? The High Inspector's surface rippled with patterns of solemn agreement. The universe had indeed laughed at humanity once, but that laughter had died today, replaced by something far more valuable. Respect, tinged with just a touch of fear. The Phoenix's quantum core pulsed quietly, its power reaching through dimensions beyond normal space. Humanity had taken its place among the stars not by following the expected path, but by daring to imagine new ones. And in doing so, they had changed the galaxy forever.